Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk about web forms markers, just a simple, quick tutorial on how to install it. And then I'm going to walk through how to create a form and just the different parts of a web forms markers form. Um, this is a great tutorial for marketers and developers. I'll start mentioning areas of extensibility within web forms markers where you can build additional functionality. Either you could have your developers that you work with build this additional functionality, or if you are a developer, you can use that additional functionality to enhance these features for your marketers. Um, Web Forms Markers is a really great tool for marketers because it allows them to build a form without having to involve a developer. And that's really the point of Sitecore, in my opinion, is to enhance it to the point where you don't necessarily need a developer for everything. There's going to be opportunities and situations where you want to integrate that Web Forms Markers form with Salesforce or some sort of external provider, and in that case, you will need an additional developer. But the bare bones, some of the marketing features that it integrates with out of the box is a very powerful tool for a marketer. So let's get going. Let's just go ahead and create a new Sitecore instance, which I'll be using Sitecore Instance Manager. It's a great tool if you haven't seen me use it in other tutorials, but basically you can just spin up new instances of Sitecore instances out of the box just really quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Install Instance, and I'm going to do an 8.2 Update 2 instance, and then I'm just going to call it WFFM.local since I'm installing web forms markers. I'm not going to select any of these options, but I am going to select Sitecore Web Forms for Markers 8.2 version. You can install other versions of web forms markers that you can install with other versions if you needed to, but I'll click next. I'm going to do a clean slate just to have a pretty blank solution and or a blank Sitecore instance, and then no options here. So next, and now it's going to install these options. So let's give it a few minutes for it to install everything. All right, now it's complete. So I'm going to go ahead and open in the browser the new instance. And there you go, it loads up. So now I've installed web forms markers in this instance. So I'm going to go ahead and log into Sitecore. It's actually really powerful to use Incident Manager because installing web forms markers can be a very tedious task to do by yourself. I've often found that it can crash for no reason, or it can take just literally forever to install. So to use the sim just to quickly have it installed is a magical thing. So now I'm in the system. I'm gonna go into the content editor just to prove that's been installed. So if I go into content editor, you'll see that once it loads, they're inside the system area. There is a modules area, and inside there you'll see now there's a web forms for markers folder that exists. If I open up that, you can see kind of it shows all the forms that you have created. It also has a settings area where you would define additional parameters if you wanted to create additional save actions, if you wanted to create some system types, if you wanted to change some validations. You can actually define additional field types, and there's some information on metadata, such as you can actually add CSS classes and things like that for your instance. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and go back to the Launchpad and click on Desktop, and then I'm going to fire up the Web Forms for Marketers, the Form Designer. There's other ways you can get to this, but this is probably the easiest. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to Click on Demo Form and click OK. Now comes up a form designer, which allows you to basically build your form however you may choose to build it. Out of the box, it comes with a bunch of fields that you can customize, and it's a really easy to use interface. So at the top, you'll see that there is a area of text. You can actually select it using the form designer, and then you can customize it with HTML text or whatever you might need here. Then there's kind of like the main form area, which is, it's got additional settings, things that you can make changes to. And then there's kind of like these sections that you can also create additional sections by adding section, add fields to add additional fields. One thing I will note about web forms markers I don't particularly like, which I'm trying to build a newer version of this, is the fact that it's all just right there, one after another. You can't columnize the look and feel without building in some additional CSS out of the box. Also, if you wanted to, let's say you want an image between the title and the other title, then you really can't do that easily. So that's kind of where that comes in. So I'm going to select the title of a field, and now you can see that I have more options. I can select the default value. I can select some help text. I can specify the CSS class that this uses, which these pull from that area that I was showing you before inside the content editor. It's where you can set the different classes that you want the user to be able to select from. And you can do some things with the styling of this using these classes, but it's still semi-limited. So validation, you can add additional customized validation. You could say that this is the email address and then this is the regular expressions. You can also customize these as well. You can just say, required, things like that. You can say letters only, security risks, etc. There's a lot of possibilities here. So there's all that. Then there's also, just a quick validation error messages when things validate incorrectly. There's some options down here for analytics, and there's also a rules engine. This basically allows you to pick rules based off that field. So, for example, doesn't mean to select that, but when the current database name is matches the master database, then this field will run a specific JavaScript. You could have it hide the element in those scenarios. And there's some other functionality there. So that's kind of a cool little feature. And if you've never worked with the rules engine, you can actually extend it as well. So that's another extensibility point for a developer, which I'm going to actually show you here soon in a couple of videos, is how to extend the rules engine. Maybe I'll show you how to extend the web forms markers rules engine, but I'll also be showing you how to do buckets and how to extend its conditions and its actions. These are conditions, these are actions. So based off these conditions, it will perform this action, whatever the rules engine is defined for. So that's that. You can also change the field types. So just like Sitecore fields, these are similar in a lot of ways. Slightly different. There's a few more fields that you might not necessarily ever have inside Sitecore fields, but you have the SMS, MMS, telephone number, for example. If you wanted to collect a phone number, you could say this is a credit card field. In that case, then you would have some validations to make sure that the credit card number is correct, things like that. You can even specify card types. So if you had this and you were taking payments, you could say, I don't want to take credit cards from Maestro, JCP, etc. I believe there's a way to turn that off. there's a way. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head, but um, and you know, different options there for the different types of fields, and that's kind of to be standard. And you can also delete fields. So if you don't want a section or you don't want a field, you can just press the X. Now delete the field. So you can create multiple different you know, sections or fields. You know, what forms markers form. And then lastly, there is another box at what they consider a footer. This is another description field. This is where you can customize this with additional text. And that's pretty much it. Now, the last part is the submit button. This is probably the more complex of the actions of web forms markers. So there's a lot of things that can handle. So first is the button name. That's just the name of the button. So if you change this, you wanted to say log in, for example, you just change this to login. Form verification. This is a custom rules that you can define for verification of a form. So if you wanted it to, if I click add real quick, or actually if I click one of these, check user name and password, click that, add it, and then I can also customize which fields are the username, the user password, and domain, etc. So, and you can do this for a couple other things as well. So you can kind of customize these. So you could create additional form verifications, and then you could customize them through this interface, which I'll show in a later course. Then you can customize these different actions. So you could select an action and then specify what its error message would be. So you would specify the different ones here. And so if you had a lot of different types of verifications, then you would add them and then what error message it would display. The next kind of more important part is the save actions. So if you click on edit, by default, there is a register goal. That's just the default one. So let's say you wanted to create a user when somebody saves. Then you have the ability to specify some additional settings for that user. You can even set properties. You can take values from the form and fill it into the user profile, which is actually a very powerful feature. And like I said, this is all customizable as well. So if you wanted to create a very complex save action, let's say populate Salesforce, take these X fields and populate, you know, this third-party provider, or take, you know, a form and populate some external system, you could actually specify the mappings and it would map it over for you. And then also you have, you can customize the error messages based upon these save actions when they fail. So if you wanted to, you created a custom save action and then you said, oh, it failed, well then you would show a specific error for that. Logout, you could create a logout one. I'm gonna quickly show some of the more advanced ones. So inside Sitecore, there is the concept of a contact list. This is kind of a CRM-esque feature of Sitecore. It's not a very fully built out feature, but you can actually tie in directly with that. So you can say add, and then you can customize this contact list. You can say always when blah 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 is selected, it will fill in this contact list. We don't have any contact list defined in this instance because we just created it, so it has not going to populate. But that's one of the features you can have. Another is update contact details. This is a feature of XDB. So you can actually have it map these features or these fields to specific contact details or facets in your system. So for example, file upload is a bad example, but let's say you had an email. Well, you could add that to emails, and that's not a very helpful field, but let's do there's not an option here, but since I just had random fields there, but just pretend number is actually their name. So if you click on personal, then I can say it fills in their first name. And then you can kind of fill in their XDB profile using a Web Forms for Markers form. And where this becomes really powerful is then you can start collecting information from a form and then start dynamically either filling XDB or filling some other portions of your marketing features just from without doing any additional development. You'll find that when you work with developers, they'll build forms outside of Web Forms for Markers, and it doesn't have half these features out of the box. And if they do build these features, it takes a lot of customization. Now, is Web Forms for Markers always the best solution? No, that's not true. There's a lot of things that Web Forms Markers can't do easily. There's a lot of fields and advanced functionality that you might have a form, and to build it to support those features or to have Web Forms Markers actually support all those features would be a lot of development effort. So in some instances, it makes sense to just have a custom form. And if you know what features of the marketing suite that you want to use, you can tell developers when they're developing it to utilize those features. So, and then there's this register goal. Let me 1 second. Let me. So you can enroll the user in an engagement plan if you had already had engagement plans set. You could also you could create an item from it. I don't know what scenario that would be in. Maybe you were creating items. Maybe if you had a form for comments and you wanted to create an item in Sitecore to represent that comment, you could do that here. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea. Also, you could register a conversion or register a campaign for that as well, which makes sense if you want to say, okay, well, this user has done this, now register a campaign based off that. That might be a good idea. So there's a lot of options there. I'm going to go ahead and remove a lot of these options here. I'm going to leave. Oh, one other one I wanted to show is sending email messages. So you can actually customize this whole process and specify who you want stuff to send to. And you can even use tokens, which is what I think is really awesome. So if you had a name here, you could actually tokenize it, and it would pull in that value from the form that was entered, whatever value came in. So if you had email, for example, they fill in their email field, it puts that as a 2. So it allows you to then customize your emails really quick, and it's a pretty cool tool. So that's just something I was mentioning. Lastly, I just want to show specifying the goal. So by default, you have to select an existing goal. You should really create different goals if you want to, track different types of actions. But for example, if this was a news, somebody had come through to this form, a landing page form, bit from an email campaign, you might want to track that email campaigns as a separate goal. But that's kind of outside the discussion of this. But you could just say it's a brochure request. By default, dropout tracking is enabled by default. This just lets you track who has been dropping out of your form. And I'll just configure all that. And finally, last but not least, is a success message where you can either say, hey, I want to send this user to a success page, or you can send the user just to the current page and just have a thank you for filling out the form. So that's pretty much it for Sitecore Web Forms Markers. If If you have any questions about this, please let me know. I'm going to be doing more tutorials on web forms markers, such as getting more into the developer focused part of web forms markers, how we can start customizing some of this stuff. I will also talk about web forms markers a little bit more when I start going through some of my marketing case studies I'd like to go through coming up. So be on the lookout for those. And all right, reach out to me if you have any questions.